I think the secret when you're doing drugs is to do the right ones, to do the correct ones. Many of you who know me understand that between 2015 to 2018, I was a classic archetypal stoner, meaning I don't think I was sober in those years at all. I was constantly high. I would smoke like 2 or 3 joints a day, which is problematic, especially when you're studying. I was to the posh and privileged individuals that were flat sharing with me an absolute nightmare because daddy's little girl couldn't tolerate me. To be honest, I was doing some pretty unsavory behavior now that I actually think about it. I mean, I would smoke up in the house sometimes. I'm thinking about somebody in particular. There's no there is no risk in her watching this video at all because she absolutely despises me, and probably for good reason. But I just remember, you know, she would complain about the smell. I find the smell quite nostalgic, actually. And whenever she would complain, I would just skin up in front of her, and I would lean into it a little bit. Now, why am I telling you this? Because I recently visited Thailand, and cannabis is legal in Thailand. Now, whether or not you believe me or not, it makes no difference to me if you believe me or not, but I went to Bangkok, Thailand for the purposes of occupational lifestyle, or just lifestyle in general, exploration. There is a growing seed in my mind that this country, the UK, is done. And it brings me no pleasure to say that, but I think it's true. I have a lot of love and respect for this country, but I think it's lost, especially over the last 15 years, 10 years or so. Anyway, besides the point. So many of you maybe think that, oh, Joseph want to revisit old pleasures. I was swayed immediately on the second day when I was walking through one of the very popular high streets in Bangkok, Thailand, by a man's very ingenious marketing and sales pitch, which looked a little bit like this. So I'm walking down the road and he's on a balcony and he does this. And I go, yeah, yeah, sure. So I go in, I buy some weed, I get some tobacco, I skin up, I roll a joint. What's also interesting is that not a lot of people roll in Thailand. It's all like pre-rolled stuff, or they'll roll it for you. But because the guy was asking me, do you need me to roll it for you? And I was like, oh, I've had some experience in this particular endeavor. And I began to smoke a joint out on the balcony. Very surreal experience, just looking at life happen as you're just smoking a joint, feeling no paranoia as I would in this country for that kind of activity. Now, the reason I'm telling you the story is that I smoked probably about half a joint, and I realized this is medical grade cannabis. I remember they come in little glass jars, these nugs, and I'm turning it as I'm starting to feel the onset of the cannabis, and the paranoia and the anxiety start to reappear. And I look at the back and it's medical grade cannabis. And I kind of sat there and went, I think I've overdone this. I think I've overshot this. I think my old pride and ego on this being a substance I'm very, very familiar with, but not thinking about the tolerance that I would have built up, or lack of tolerance, I should have said, because it's been 8 years. 8 years. 8 years. And the reason why, I suppose I should have finished the rest of my story. I'm jumping around here, guys. Apologies. The reason why I stopped at 2018, some of you know the story already, but long story short is my dealer at the time changed. It was actually a woman dealer, which was really interesting and it always sticks out in my mind. But she sold me something that wasn't cannabis. It looks like cannabis, but it was called prison spice, which is a hallucinogen. And you're not supposed to smoke it because it can kill you. And essentially this brought on, I've done a whole video on this. This is a very big story, but basically I had a psychotic episode and I ended up being arrested and then put in hospital in this country for about 28 days. And that's under the Mental Health Care Act here in this country. 28 days of no contact with the public because there is a danger of self-harm or harm to other people. I get it. I get it. So I couldn't do that again. I couldn't risk it. It was too risky. But I realized that when I was in the country of Thailand that this is all legal. It's all grown, above board. It's all, checked. But it's also very strong. It's very strong. Very, very strong. To the point where I think I might have flitted between some alternate dimensions and realities in which this avatar Joseph exists. Now, the insight that I got, because I did get a bit panicky, the insight that I got was not too dissimilar to an insight that I got when I was taking psilocybin, a macro dose of psilocybin, which is above 5 grams. And this is the more profound part, I suppose, of this particular video. And it's going to sound really trite. Life is always about moving forward, penetrating the world. There is a energy, an abundance, there is a comfort and a confidence in what you're visually seeing in reality when you're moving forward, when you're pressing forward. It's like, you know what, there was a moment as I was walking back to my hotel while being absolutely out of my mind high, like absolutely cross-eyed. It made me think about if you're walking a tightrope. Life is kind of like walking a tightrope. And you have to move with purpose, focusing on the other end of the rope. And you're not sprinting towards it, but you're kind of moving with a quiet grace and confidence towards that goal. And I started realizing if you're stuck in inaction at the moment and you're kind of thinking, oh, what do I do here? What do I and too afraid to make risk or progress or have the composure and the faith, that's a good word, the faith that you're going to make it to the other side of the tightrope. If you don't have that, you'll fall. You kind of go off kilter and you'll fall to the side, to the wayward. And there's a relief to that anxiety and that paranoia as I was walking in realizing because the state of consciousness you're in when you're that stoned is you're seeing the results of those kinds of thoughts, what I just described to you, in real time. Like I remember when I was trying to leave the shop, I was very, very anxious that I was really high and I didn't want to say thank you to the guys because they would know I was really, really high, and then I got paranoid that they'd be talking about me behind my back, like this guy's like fucked. And I just made a mess of the social interaction. I was all over the place because I was in my head and thinking, do I do this? Do I not do this? And then as I was walking back to the hotel, this idea emerged in my consciousness. And then I started to play it out. Like again, so random because this is, I wouldn't say out of character, but maybe atypical of my characters, just saying hello to people on the street. How are you doing as they're going past? Just genuine interactions and remarks that have the purpose of uplifting people and putting a smile on their face. And then you see that reflected back in you. But the one thing I will say is the paranoia and the anxiety. A lot of people don't get it. They don't get, I mean, if you've never smoked cannabis before, it makes you very, very paranoid. And when you hear something like that, you think, well, why on earth would you want to be paranoid? That sounds awful. A lot of people hate it, but there is almost like it's almost like a mental and spiritual and emotional training ground in that respect. Like, if you can battle that fear and anxiety and overcome it, then when you're sober, the interactions aren't as overwhelming, if that makes any kind of sense to you. But I realized that, going back to the initial thing that I said, be careful about, or it's about the right drugs you do, that cannabis isn't for me, I don't think. The only utility I can ever see cannabis being used for in a positive light for me is as a sleeping aid. Like if I'm struggling to sleep. That's the only, and that was the only reason I started, to be frank with you. And then it became a social, this sounds terribly sad, and you're more than welcome to make fun of me here, but I used to use weed as a kind of prop. Like if I was the guy at the party who was skinning up and rolling weed, it was a easy thing for a person to start a conversation with and potentially make friends. Everybody likes the guy at the party who's I wanted to be that guy at the party. That's sad. Very, very sad. It worked. It was sad. And then the only other, and this is going to sound extremely hedonistic, guys, the only other utility I can maybe see cannabis being using for is to heighten physical sensations, particularly sexual. Like having sexual intercourse while stoned is pretty remarkable. Pretty remarkable. And this is me being, very transparent. And again, it's hedonistic, but it's an experience. You might never go back to sober sex again. But what I will say is, as much as it was a really nice spiritual insight that I got from that experience, cannabis is so dirty, it's so heavy, it's so unclean, especially when you compare it to something like psilocybin. Like it really doesn't compare for me. Like all I want to do when I smoke is go to bed and sleep and nap. And a lot of people go, oh, that's because you're smoking too much indicas. Like, I've done the sativas, I've done the indica. I've explored a wide range of different options. And although there are varying degrees of variety between the effects, maybe it might be a me problem. I don't know. But psilocybin, the energy you get, the insight that you get, the joy and uplifting consciousness shift you get, it pales in comparison. So why am I telling you this? It's really the point. I suppose it goes back to the initial premise of the video, which is everything is a drug. Food is a drug. Coffee is a drug. What you're really, the ambivalence people have in this particular area when it regards drugs or narcotics or things like that, are the legality one, and the risk involved for sure another. What we're really talking about is the things that we bring into our internal environment that change our consciousness, be it for good purposes such as spiritual insight, which there is no argument that can be an outcome of it. That is not a dispute at all. Or if it's for something more hedonistic, I mean, you can talk about the more pleasure-inducing ones for sure, but what are the outcomes? That's always my opinion. What are the outcomes? What are you getting? How is it changing you as a person? Is it bringing you closer or further away to the individual that you want? Cannabis didn't bring me closer to the version that I wanted to be, and I still don't think it has any utility for me. Coffee maybe brings me closer. I have an ambivalent relationship with that. Nicotine makes me more productive. Can fasting be a drug? I mean, you're not putting anything in, but you're certainly changing the state of your consciousness. Fasting brings me closer to the person that I want to be. Is fat a drug? Is protein a drug? Are eggs a drug? Is raw milk a drug? This is an interesting meditation. What brings you closer to the individual that you want to become? Speak soon.